All right, everyone. Hope you're doing well. And thank you for joining us for today's CIO Snapshot session, Success Factors in the Age of COVID-19. I'm Dave Ulishny, Senior Director of Executive Education here at Carnegie Mellon University's Heinz College. I have the fortunate opportunity also to be the director of the CIO program as well. And so it is my pleasure to introduce to you our distinguished speaker and CIO program faculty member, Steve Agnoli. Steve has over 2 decades of senior executive level technical leadership experience. He's an award-winning CIO and currently is the CIO of Reed Smith, a very large billion-dollar international law firm headquartered here in Pittsburgh. Steve teaches the role of the CIO module within our CIO program, the first module that all our students get to complete. And that's why we asked Steve here today to take you through this session, which is a very important and very timely topic. So Steve, thank you, sir, for doing this. If you would, please take it away.
All right, David, thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be with you all here today. Spend a little bit of time talking about some of the things that I've seen that can assist in making a CIO successful. So with that, why don't we go ahead and get started? So, when we think about coronavirus, certainly one of the biggest topics to hit the world in a long, long time, right? The impact of this from a human perspective as well as from a business perspective is well known. And so when we look at where we are today, we want to decide and kind of think about what are some of those impacts here. And, when we were, maybe before March of 2020, we didn't really see the need for, or we didn't see as much of an issue related to digital transformation, right around the corner. But, COVID, along with all the issues that it has presented, also presented issues related to the IT capabilities and the IT functions within an organization and how they can respond not only to the particular COVID situation, but also how we can position our firms and help our firms move forward to be able to deal with the future and a changed future, maybe different than what we had originally thought we would deal with. And so, as we move forward here today, as well as in our roles within our organizations, we have to look at this changing role, the components that make that up, and how to address those. But also we look at our role within the organizations as to how we can lead the businesses forward in bringing that necessary change and positioning our firms to take advantage and to move forward. So with that, I thought we would start off with talking about some of the top 5 factors that lead to success in this age. From a CIO role perspective, you are the one who sets the agenda for digital transformation, for innovation, for enabling the business to achieve its goals. That, if you had to pick one, that's the one I would pick, right? That is what the CIO role is all about. But you also have to make sure that you focus on running your firm and your function as a business, and also address business issues, technical issues, business issues, and do that in a way that helps your organization be more effective and more efficient. You have to be a master of prioritization and delegation. I don't think any of us, there's not enough hours in the day, so to speak. So as part of our role, we need to be able to understand the things that matter the most, focus on those, and then bring the right resources to bear to get those things done. There's a concept that we talk about in our class that's called prioritize, focus, and resource. And those are the 3 steps that you do to be successful. If you do those, you'll be successful. If you don't, it will be a challenge. And I think this speaks to this idea of prioritization and delegation, the ability to get things done, but do it in the proper way. Communications is a key component of what we do in the CIO role. And our ability to translate those technical components or those technical concepts and put them into business terms is critical for us to be successful, as for the organization to be successful. But it's also critical for the CIO to be seen as someone who is a business leader and part of the business team with the other chief officers within your organization. So the communications can't be under focused. And it's a key component of success, both for the organization and then the individual. And then I would say, you have to build trust and respect of the others within your organization. It's very difficult to be successful, and it's very difficult to move initiatives forward in an environment of mistrust and lack of respect. And so we'll talk about that a little bit, but, having that trust of others and frankly, having their backs and their, helping them achieve their goals is a key component to success in the role of a CIO. So I think, you can summarize that all up and say that CIOs are the stewards of transformation, and steward is defined as one who actively directs or governs affairs. And actively is kind of the key word there, right? So a couple thoughts on this. First is you are seen as the voice of IT. You are the one who embodies or represents the purpose, the benefits, the impact, and the results that are achieved from information technology. And when people think of IT, they think of you within your organization. And so you need to be that one who continually trumpets and continually talks to the issues, the solutions, and communicates well related to the value of IT that goes on. You also need to, as we said before, prioritize focus and resource. You need to focus on differentiating efforts, not just important things. There's tons of important things to do. But for us to help drive the business forward, we have to focus our time, our investments, our resources on things that differentiate both internally and externally. That's a key component of being a steward. Certainly, there's operational and transformational work that needs to be done. You need to make sure that stuff gets done. Certainly. And then, from an effectiveness and alignment with business and IT goals over time, it's critical that the things we do are seen as business worthy and business important. Because otherwise, then it just becomes technology for technology's sake. Our job is to ensure that we are aligned with where the business is going and using technology, process, and resources to get us there and do that effectively. So that alignment is critical. And then, as I mentioned earlier, our role is one of kind of a servant leadership type situation where we need to ensure that we are allowing others to achieve their business goals. And if we do that, I think we'll be successful and the business will be successful as well. So all those things kind of come together related to this concept of being a steward. So why should we, what's critical here, right? Well, digital transformation and the role that the CIO plays there is critical. It's been maybe sped up a bit or exacerbated by COVID, but it's always been there. It's always something that we need to look at. And you see the reasons why a digitally transformed firm has advantages, and you see them listed there. You innovate at a higher rate, you have more ability to innovate, and people feel empowered throughout the organization. In a digitally transformed organization, there's more collaboration. The use of cross-functional teams is higher because there's more of a need, right? There's more kind of components to deal with in a fast-moving and a transformed place. Makes sense. You have to keep an eye on things a little bit more. That's what that greater governance thing is here. Because you're moving so fast, you need to kind of have a little bit more control, if you want to call it that, or at least awareness of what's happening and managing and directing that. But that's not a bad thing. Governance done well is important. And then I think the last point, which is very interesting, in these kind of organizations, people think they have the ability to react and adapt and move ahead with the market. Transformed organizations that have not digitally transformed don't have a strong feeling there. So what does that mean? That means that you're probably going to be more successful from a business perspective, and your people are probably going to be happier and more productive in an organization like that. And so as the CIO looks at digital transformation, it looks at not only what do we need to do from a systems perspective or a technology perspective, but what can we do to make our workforce increasingly efficient and want to stay. And that's critical to what we do. So, when you look at the digital transformation thing, there's some components and leadership competencies that I think are reflected here. So the first, from a reimagining perspective, we're really looking at delivering competitive advantage across the various platforms and across the business overall. So we reimagine, we build competitive advantage. When we reinvent delivery, we're kind of anticipating and delivering and aligning on business needs. And you see some of the points that are related to that. And then the future-proof component is really kind of optimizing business operations. And, again, that competitive advantage, the anticipating and aligning with business needs, and the optimizing business operations, those are all leadership capabilities that are crucial to a CIO. And so as we look across these various things related to digital transformation, I think we're also looking at leadership capabilities that CIOs need to bring to the table. So from an overall responsibilities perspective, I think this is pretty straightforward, right? CIOs focus across a wide span. They go from the conceptual to the specific, from any organization to a particular implementation within that. And they need to be able to speak to IT's capabilities to deal with these various responsibility areas, or the span, if you want to call it that. I think you also have to be able to think both conceptually and specific and in between. And when you're in one situation, consider the others, right? So if you're in a specific situation, think about the conceptual or the logical impacts of that, and vice versa, right? Go up and down. So you have to be able to go up and down the triangle or the pyramid constantly. That's a component of the responsibility and the ability to think within that role. There are, Deloitte has put together 9 competencies that will elevate a CIO to a business leader. I think that these do a nice job of kind of summarizing the kind of competencies that CIOs as leaders need to deal with. And the subcategories there do a nice job, and they should sound familiar. It's what we talked about on the previous slide, right? And that is ability to optimize business operations, anticipating and aligning with business needs, and delivering competitive advantage. And then the breakdown underneath each one of those. The optimizing piece is looking at kind of that prioritizing, focusing, and resourcing, and bringing those things to deliver and get better. The anticipating and aligning is more of being a valued business partner. And when you think about what's looking here, especially the fusing business and technology strategy, there's a component of trust that's related there, right? The business needs to trust that you can help them achieve their goals. You can help them get their initiatives completed, and you'll do it well. So there's that model kind of falls there as well. And then when we're talking about the competitive advantage, it's really preparing the business for what comes next. And so when we look at each one of these components, I think it gives a nice overview of the types of things that we can look at and say, are we doing these within the role? Are these areas that we're accomplished in, or we can do better at? And if so, how might that benefit the organization as we move forward? So we'll take that forward a little bit here with a specific example. And, this is certainly the times that we live in, for sure, related to COVID. And it's been a significant human challenge, certainly, but it's also a significant business challenge, and one that has presented new and changing situations and issues at a very, very rapid pace. So, CIOs working with other business leaders are critical to helping to evaluate the situation, to solve the problem, and help the firm move forward. I don't think any organization is going to look at this COVID time and say, well, thanks for getting us through the COVID, but we're in bad shape after the COVID, right? So through this process, we're looking at dealing with COVID as well as positioning the firm from a technological, human, business, and other perspective to be, to come out strong. So McKinsey and Company had put together a kind of a priorities list related to some of the key business challenges that COVID presented. And you see them listed on the screen here. And you also see, some of the ways that they looked at to say, here's how an organization, both technical and business, can look at and, try to address these areas. So in seeing this, I took that, and then I tried to overlay those 9 competencies that we talked about in the previous slide. And, trying to draw almost a map that said to do, various of these things, or to address some of the responses that McKinsey has listed here. How would a skill or a capability of a CIO be applied there across these various leadership areas? So some of them are, pretty straightforward, right? engaging customers in the entrepreneurship column here, there's a direct, there's the same words actually up in the McKinsey chart, right? So there's that, but there's also things that you would want to look at these concepts of leadership that you'll find below, that would apply here. So how would you apply, driving agility? How does that apply to the things that are above there? How does, developing talent apply in these kind of circumstances? And I think it's important because if you look only at the COVID time, then you may miss the opportunities to develop talent, develop agility and things like that will benefit you once COVID is over. And I think that's what, speaks back to the triangle, right? We have to think conceptually while we're thinking specifically. We have to look at the problem in big terms and as well as in small terms that presents. So, I think it hopefully gives you a little example of how CIOs are always evaluating and determining actions and course changes or course corrections, so they're able to deliver on promises both today and down the road. So with that, a couple other ideas here. So, it's critical for CIOs to be able to identify and understand the various constituencies that they are dealing with and who they, need to manage with. This is similar to the triangle that we talked about, right? That, conceptual specific here. There's a wide organizational span of management best practice related here. But I think you can kind of summarize that in the three areas that you see here, and that's manage up, manage down, and manage across. So when you're managing up, you want to keep management apprised of what you're doing, why you're doing it, how it's going, what was achieved. Keep people from being surprised, right? And can you leverage more down the road? This is where your governance processes can be very, very helpful here, because it's an opportunity to involve management and business management in the process of IT. But it's important to do that, right? Certainly keep your management involved. The second area is manage down, and that's working with your team in, ensuring that they have a voice, ensuring that, the agreed path is known and understood and can be acted upon, that they're supported, that there is proper resourcing for them, et cetera, that they're able to complete the job that you've put before them, and that they get credit for the work that they do. And we did, I didn't kind of approach to things, right? That's a key component, right, to getting things done. And you want to ensure success now, but you also want to use the process to ensure success later. The third component is managing across, and this is with your peer group. And this is both your peers within the C-suite and your peers within business management, as well as other interested parties. Keep them informed, make sure they have situational awareness of what you're doing and what's going on, know what their needs are and how you are able to deliver solutions to address those needs, et cetera. This is where you build trust within the organization. So, all of these work together to bring success not only to the CIO role, but also to the organization as they work through things. And again, I think it kind of speaks to this servant leadership idea that can be inherent in being a successful CIO. So from a communication standpoint, I don't think anybody's ever been successful in an area where there's poor communication or incomplete communications. It just doesn't happen that way. So communications are critical for CIOs. And I also think it's an area where CIOs can differentiate themselves within their business and even outside their business, right? Because it's not always a skill that is inherent in that role. So, it's worth spending time working on how to be a great communicator. And some of the ways to do that, I think, you see listed on the screen there. First, deal in facts. It's hard to dispute a fact. You might not like it, but you can't really dispute it. And so by dealing in facts, you're able to make accurate assessments. You're able to make better business decisions, whether it's a good fact or a bad fact, so to speak. And again, while others might not like it, they'll be able to focus on the issue and come up with a better solution. I think it allows you to focus on solutions, not debates. And in your role, speed is important. You need to be able to do that. And I think dealing in facts is one way to do that. Another way to do it is to keep things simple or make things simple. In my industry, our lawyers go through all kinds of training and school and updates and all this kind of stuff and know all these complicated concepts. But the reason they do that is they try and get to what they call plain language. And plain language is something that anyone can understand. When they read a document, there's no confusion. It's crystal clear what the intention is of that particular clause, that particular paragraph, et cetera. And I think we as CIOs should do the same thing. We shouldn't try to, baffle people with acronyms and all that stuff. Speak plainly, speak clearly. Everyone can understand and get on board. We talked about, regularly updating. That's the up, down, and across stuff. But there's also a communication component to that, and that's communicating up, down, across, and out. Up is keeping management informed, right? So that you avoid surprises. Down is keeping the team informed so you can move initiatives forward. Across is keeping your peers in the loop and aware of how you are helping them achieve their goals. And then out is ensuring that external constituencies, understand what you're doing, and it's an opportunity to gain competitive advantage in the market. So all of those components work together from a communication standpoint. I think there's a 3-step communication approach. An old boss of mine told me this, and I think he was right on the money. And he summarized it as, okay, when you need to tell somebody or you want to communicate or you want to do a presentation, here's this 3 steps. Step 1, tell them what you're going to tell them. Step 2, tell them. And step 3, tell them what you told them. It works every time. So if you're looking for some little nugget to take away from today, this is a good one. And it also helps focus you because it ensures that you are staying on course because you have to summarize, so to speak, at the end. So you want to make sure what you intended is what you tell them at the end as well. There's certainly and I use the word sell here, but there's certainly that kind of sell component to what it is that IT does. IT is, it's a big investment in an organization. So people do want to know what they're getting for their money. So when you go before a board or the executive committee or whatever you have within your organization, they kind of look at the value of IT from the components that you see on the screen there. So are we doing the right things? Are we doing things right? Are we competitive with peers and competitors? Are we executing to plan, mitigating and managing risk, adding value to the business continually? And are we adding value to customers continually? That's how they assess whether investments should be made or value is being realized. And I think a good way to summarize that is, what I call the brick. And that is they look at the value of IT or investments in IT based on business value, risk, either the risk assumed or the risk avoided. What's going to take implementation? What's going to take to make this happen? How much is it going to cost? And also from a knowledge gained perspective, are we better spot related to our customers or our competitors or our internal processes and things like that. So I think, it's helpful to know how management is looking at the IT function and assessing its value, because that can guide you as to how you talk to them about IT. You always hear about the elevator speech. This is kind of the elevator speech on steroids. Having these things in mind allows you to let people know, what you're up to and how it's valuable to them. It also, frankly, is a check to you to make sure that you're doing the things that matter the most. So I think this is an important thing to keep in mind from a success within the role perspective, but also from a value perspective. Anytime you're speaking the same language as the folks you're dealing with, you're usually in a better spot. So from an overall perspective, McKinsey had put together these principles of high performance IT long time ago, but I think they're still very, very relevant. They're relevant in the age of COVID. They're relevant after COVID. And frankly, they were relevant before COVID. These are just the good things that organizations should strive to deliver. And I think if you use these 6 points as a guidepost, you're able to say, are we achieving, are we headed in the direction that we need to be? Is our IT capability a business-driven function, not just a technology-driven function? Again, technology is serving the solutions, serving the business need. We don't do technology for technology's sake. Is it a business-driven function? Do you make your decisions, both funding and otherwise, based on value? Your management does. You probably should as well. You want to be as simplistic as possible. There's a saying that says, in effect that, doesn't matter what you do, you're just driving simplicity, because that allows people to achieve their goals. So complexity kills, simplicity is where you want to go. You have to look in the near term, right? You've heard from a project management perspective in sprints and things like that. You want short-term deliverables, right? So we need to deliver our results quickly and not wait to be able to do that. We want to continue to move forward and bring improvement over time, continuous improvement. And you want your IT team to be business smart. And through the communications, through some of those management principles that we talked about, we want to help our organizations become IT smart. That's the best of both worlds. So when I look at these kind of these high performance IT principles, I do think they do a nice job of summarizing a well-functioning and well-operating IT group. Something to keep in mind. And then I share with you this this quote, because I think it does do a nice job of kind of, how you build trust, serve others, and allow you to be successful. Neil Nicolason is kind of an IT transformation consultant, and he's done a lot of good work and has a lot of good information. Maybe somebody you might want to look up. But the key components I think that he says here is that he strives to form relationships of trust within his business, and that allows him the opportunity to kind of put their purpose over his personal agenda, keep his commitments, and help everyone to achieve their goals. By doing that, it frees him up to lead the organization into a technology-driven future. I think that's a really nice way to kind of say, overall, this is what we are looking to do as a CIO. And this is how we can make those differences in that regard. So just a couple things, I know we went through that stuff really quickly, but the goal here is to try and just give you a flavor for some of the competencies and the attributes and the skills and the techniques that can assist someone in their CIO role. We didn't talk about cybersecurity. We didn't talk about, cloud computing. We didn't talk about data. We were talking about the things and the attributes that make somebody successful in the role, and gave you at least an inkling or a summary of some of those things. We certainly go into much greater detail in the CIO program on these topics as well as others. But again, I hope this was an opportunity to at least give you, maybe a few things to think about as you go back to your roles and think about how, some of these kind of concepts and some others that you may find could be helpful as you press forward in your career. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you all today here. Thank you very much for your time and attention. And with that, Dave, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Steve, for a great session. Really appreciate it. Excellent points on a very, very timely topic. And so thank you, folks, for attending this CIO Snapshot session. For more information on our program, please visit our website or send us an email at heinzexeced@cmu.edu. Take care, everyone. Thank you.